Chaz, when you said it off camera and then Stu stole your thunder, I immediately went, oh, yes, that's absolutely right. And now that I think about it, I go, is it?
Hi, I'm Stu Willis.
And I'm Chaz Fisher.
And welcome to Draft Zero, a podcast where two emerging filmmakers and a special guest in today's episode try to work out what makes great screenplays work.
One established screenwriter. And just before we introduce him, to let everyone know, today we have brought our guest on in particular to talk about subtext. We're going to talk about what subtext means to us. In particular, I guess, how to make it work and whether it should be an objective at all. And to do so, we're looking in particular at the films of Michael Clayton. Yes, Michael Clayton is back after last episode. Written and directed by Tony Gilroy. We're looking at Inglourious Basterds, which we've done a whole episode on Tarantino, but I'm not sure if we've ever done Inglourious Basterds in particular, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. And then we are doing the fabulous, more recent entry into this particular group, The Substance, written and directed by Coralie, Fargeat.
Yes.
And that voice you hear is this established screenwriter. It is Tom Vaughn, screenwriter and teacher. Tom, if you don't know him, he's quite active on social media. And I started reading his tidbits about screenwriting and went, this is a guy who kind of aligns with the way I think about screenwriting. And I signed up to his excellent newsletter, Story and Plot. And he wrote this incredible article on how subtext is overrated. And here we are, almost a year later, trying to organize it, and talking about it. We have Tom on the show to join us talking about subtext. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of direct text trying to get a meeting going.
In our defense, even though you've written a film that was shot in Australia, which is the great Winchester,
yes.
You're actually based in Texas.
I am based in Texas and dying to get down there to film another movie, hopefully pretty soon. So,
awesome. And maybe the fact that you obviously have a passion for horror is maybe the reason I align with your take on it, because I think some of those more visceral genres require a certain approach to screenwriting. And that is reflected in this conversation around subtext. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with my kind of biases, because I think we should define subtext.
Sure.
I love that you're starting and not asking our guest what his take on subtext is. This is very Draft Zero.
This is true. Maybe we should cut this and go, Tom, why is subtext overrated?
No, I want mine to be a reaction.
Okay. All right. So Stu, you go.
Okay. So it's not what is subtext. It's more like why I'm interested in this. Mm-hmm. When I was a beginning screenwriter, I wrote stuff and I kind of struggled with the idea of subtext, and I was making stuff where characters kind of talked around each other and it didn't really sound natural, and it was overly loaded or overly laden with symbolism, right? I kind of made stuff like a little bit indecipherable, but I thought it was like subtext.
Sure.
And I've taught screenwriting and seen that same problem with kids. It's like, they're young adults, and it's like, how do you teach people to think about subtext? So there's that element of like at the beginning of your screenwriting journey. But I think as I've gotten older and more experience, it's less about that and more about how do I write the subtext on the page? What are the tools that I can use to kind of, I was going to say the implicit, explicit in a way, but we'll get to what I mean by that. What about you, Chaz? What kind of brought you to wanting to discuss this with Tom?
I think I'm just going to be a bit literal for a second. Subtext is whatever text is going on beneath the text. So what do we mean by text? I'm like, we're talking about film and TV. What are the characters literally doing and saying? And is there any other meaning underneath that beyond the literal, beyond what they're doing and saying? And that to me is subtext. And there's, I think, when subtext is done really well in a scene where, and we're going to look at this incredible scene from Michael Clayton where two characters are talking around something, but the audience understands so clearly what they're actually talking about that it can be seen as subtle and deft and awesome. But I think there's a lot of work going on under the hood of those scenes that is not like a writer just going, I need to be more subtle or something like that to make subtext work. So, not to bury the lead. All right, Tom, reaction time. What's your take on subtext?
I think they're both fine takes. I think the literal take is definitely what I tend to think about. I know when I'm writing, I've been writing a long time. I used to find subtext fun, a lot like Stu of like, okay, this is part of the job. And now I don't think about it at all. Like it never occurs to me about subtext. It's just not part of my scenes anymore. And I think someone who would read my scenes or, watch these movies would think, oh, that's subtext. Because just like from the literal, explanation that you had, it was just like, well, it's just what's not being said. But for me, it's just tactics. It's just tactics and fear. It is how are you trying to get what you want? And what are you willing to reveal to the people in the room?
Yeah.
And so it comes out sounding like subtext, but from a dramatic standpoint, everyone in the room knows, everyone in the audience knows. Just that scene from Michael Clayton, everyone in the audience knows exactly what this scene is about. And it reminds me of the old Billy Wilder line of, it can be subtle as long as it's obvious.
That is actually so good.
So you start out when you're writing and you want to have subtext and you hope that you can sit there with the actors and explain it to them and they go, oh, I see, that's great. And that's actually bad writing. It's actually not particularly interesting writing from a dramatic standpoint. So, when I approach a scene, it is what are they revealing? What are they willing to reveal? What do they want? What are they trying to get? What are they willing to reveal? And it is either a tactic to get what they want or a tactic to avoid what they don't want.
Yeah. And I think before we jump in, for your benefit, Tom, Stu and I have had several explorations on tactics in previous episodes, which is we've never discussed it in this context. So just to say that we're really on board that approach. It even happened in a recent workshop on a piece of work of mine where I've got these moments where the characters build up and they let loose the truth of themselves. And I believe it was Stu. If not, I make Stu the villain of all my stories. But he said,
oh, we can do that?
We can. But Stu was like, so why did they do that? What are they trying to achieve? What is their tactic in revealing the truth of themselves? What is it they want that they've been left with no other recourse other than to reveal the truth of themselves? I'm like, damn it, those are really good questions.
It's a good monologue, though.
I mean, what I like about your take on tactics there, which is what are they trying to reveal or not reveal, is like, I like that as a simple way of thinking about it. In the same way that another thing that I think we can explore in these scenes a little bit is this idea of the emotional event, which we got from Judith Weston, and we did an episode with her.
Gosh, she's great.
Yeah, and I love that she's got like this beautiful, complex story about emotional events. She's like, the simple way of thinking about it is this relationship close? Are these people closer or further apart at the end? Right? And that's a simple way into thinking about it. And so coming back to what you were saying about tactics, and I'm going to quote your own article on this, which is subtext is not the goal, right? It's a byproduct of other goals. And I think sometimes the emphasis on thinking about too much about the subtext is it feels artificial because it's not what the characters are doing. And so when you're thinking about it from what are the characters doing, subtext is going to emerge because, as you say, it's the result of the subtext, how they're trying to get what they want, right?
Yeah.
But I want to connect it to what Chaz has kind of said earlier, when he actually said it off mic.
Oh, you're going to steal my observation.
That there's the subtext that the characters are in control of, which is tactics, and the subtext that the filmmakers are in control of. And I think this, and then I've got irony and dramatic questions and kind of emotional events as kind of the tools that the writers are in control of. I mean, in some ways, the emotional event is the result of characters seeking what they want, but I think the idea of how you dramatize that is something that the writers can put on the page. And I think what's important about, and we'll see if it bears true, the importance of tactics is that should be on the page, on the actual screen play page. And I think irony is built structurally. And so as much as we're talking about these small scenes, and it's in Michael Clayton, it's the scene when Karen is kind of basically asking for a hit to be taken out. In Inglourious Basterds, it's when Sana is confronted with the killer of her family, and we and her are trying to work out if he knows who she is. And the substance, well, it's when she turns into a giant gooey monster. But there is interesting thing in that, because I think that's more, I think we're going to leave that at the end, because I think that's more about the filmmakers trying to communicate something else. And so that is shifting subtext into this idea of maybe symbolism or theme.
Yeah.
These other ways that people will think about subtext.
Because when you said it, Chaz, when you said it off camera and then Stu stole your thunder, I immediately went, oh, yes, that's absolutely right. And now that I think about it, I go, is it? Wait, what did you mean? Like, what? And like now, it's one of those things of like a light bulb went off and then it's just slowly, okay, I'm going to need him to explain this now.
Yeah.
Like, give me an example of subtext. I will say things, I just had this little moment, because I will say things in social media and I will say things that I've thought about and I will state, and then someone will immediately say, hey, give me an example. And I get angry, like, I just did some work. They're like, you can do a little bit of work in this conversation. Like, it could be a back and forth. So I just caught myself going, give me an example of what you mean.
Well, this might be a good segue to go into these actual examples, but I'm going to bury the lead. Michael Clayton is a really clear example of both characters are talking around something. They are very deliberately choosing what to say and what not to say.
Yes.
And the subtext is between the two of them. It's understood between the two of them, and it's understood by the audience as well, right? In Inglourious Basterds, we are not clear on what the characters... We're very clear on what Shoshana knows. We are not clear on what Landa knows. And to me, it's very much all the text of that scene is them literally talking about Strudel. And the subtext of it is for the audience, and it's also for Shoshana in terms of her trying very hard not to say something, but we're really not sure where Landa sits, and that's where the drama and the tension of the scene comes from. And then I think when we'll get to the substance, you said off mic, I don't think there's text. So like the endings of the substance, the text is, don't take unknown substances, and if you happen to turn yourself into a hideous monster, don't then go and host a New Year's televised live event. That's what the text is saying, right? But the subtext is really screaming at you that it's about beauty standards and what we're prepared to go through, and we'll get into that more. But that's Sue and Elizabeth in the substance are not aware of the subtext that is being screamed at us
right
by the film, by the text, by the filmmakers.
Okay. All right. I see what you're saying. I would definitely, I like this way of thinking, but I can certainly say, like, I wonder if we're just robbing theme and tension from their own definitions and calling it subtext.
Probably.
Well, because I was going into this like broad thing, like what is the text underneath the literal meaning of the scene in front of us? And
yeah,
it could be that when you look at it from a character perspective in the substance, there is no subtext. They are doing exactly and saying exactly what they mean and want.
Yeah.
There's zero subtext from a character perspective. I think there is a lot of theme and a lot of tension coming through that has nothing to do with the characters. So, I mean, that's why you might be right. Maybe using the subtext is the wrong word, and certainly talking about subtext in just a character context is going to make better scenes. So maybe from a craft perspective,
sure,
we could limit it that way.
Yeah, because like when you did say it, and I immediately thought of Inglourious Basterds, because the narrative in our head is different from both of their heads.
Yes.
And so, like, that's kind of what I clued in with what you were saying. It's like, okay, is that what he means by that? Because, like, we have a very different set of what is going on than each character does.
Yeah, exactly. And look, ultimately, it could be that we're talking about narrative point of view here in terms of what does the audience know with respect to the characters. So in Michael Clayton, both characters and the audience all know exactly the same amount of information. Whereas we'll get to the big print of Inglourious Basterds. Sorry, we call action lines big print here in Australia. And then
I did not know that.
We get a lot of listeners going, what is this big print that they're talking about? But the action lines in the script of Inglourious Basterds, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it, but they are reinforcing the narrative irony all the time. It's like hitting us over the head. This is what you, the audience, know that Lander may or may not know, but that Shoshana very much knows.
Yeah.
So just to unpick at this idea a little bit, because I think it will be useful. I've had the advantage that I've had time to think while Chaz talks.
And not listen to me an iota.
No, because you asked for an example about the separation between subtext for the audience and subtext for the characters, and why don't we just call it theme? And I just think there is this line between moving from character into theme, and I think it's how divorced we are maybe from the experience. As you were saying, Tom, it's about these kind of the story in your head and the story for the characters. And an example of something which kind of leans more into the subtext from the filmmakers, I think, is the zone of interest, right? Which has got this very interesting effect between here are these characters, and it's a World War II movie, for those who haven't seen it, about the people that built the concentration camps, Auschwitz in particular, and we're seeing their ordinary lives, but we never see over the wall, etc. So there's this tension between what the characters are trying to do, the ordinariness of what they're doing, and our understanding of the larger story and the tension between that. So how the film is being told to us, for me, kind of has a subtextual element that is obviously thematic, but sits somewhat more closer to the kind of stuff that we're talking about. It's like almost like the tactics of the storyteller as opposed to the tactics of the character.
Right.
Right? Might be a way of thinking about it. And you could just call it, as you say, theme and meaning, and there is obviously something very useful about that. But not everyone's going to be as precise as their terminology as us, and you may be in a development meeting where someone goes, we need to work on the subtext here, and what they're actually talking about is how the audience interprets the meaning of your story as opposed to talking about the dramatic events within this scene.
Sure.
So I'm not saying we're going to be able to cover both fully, but I think the substance does do some good stuff on the page that helps you understand what it's trying to say. And I think the Inglourious Basterds does some good writing on the page as well that helps us understand that story in our heads. So I think that to me is actually a really great way of thinking about it. That the irony requires us to have the story for the characters and the story in us as the audience, and being aware of them both may help that stuff work.
Yeah, it's a great example, a zone of interest of us having a view of it 50, 60 years later when we know, gosh, it's 80 years later.
Yeah.
of what that is. And then, some of those tales that tell their structure backwards also have that same thing where we know the ending of this and the characters do not. And then, of course, there's no greater example of that than the ultimate filmmaker subtext film of Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
For the end.
Yeah.
They don't know what happened. It was Earth the whole time. I don't know if you guys do that.
Yeah, of course.
Earth the whole time.
Not in the Tim Burton 90s version.
No subtext in that movie. Zero subtext in the Burton film.
It was like plot twist.
All right. Well, let's dive into the examples.
Michael, thank God. Look, I got a situation. Arthur Edens just stripped down naked in a deposition room in Milwaukee.
You are the senior litigating partner of one of the largest, most respected law firms in the world. You are a legend.
I'm an accomplice!
You are a manic depressive.
I am Shiva, the god of death.
I'm Michael Clayton.
You're late. This is a $3 billion class action lawsuit. The architect of our defense has been arrested for running naked through a parking lot.
He's building a case against you, North.
Nobody's gonna let him do that.
Let him? Who the hell's gonna stop him?
I spent 12% of my life defending the reputation of a deadly weed killer.
Arthur.
No, wait!
They killed Michael.
You North needs to know he's under control. They've been shook up. They need to be reassured.
What are you telling me?
That I'm counting on you.
I don't want to say exactly what it was. Just that it was something that would win the whole case.
I'm not the enemy.
Then who are you?
Michael Clayton is a legal thriller about the titular character. Michael Clayton, he's a fixer of a big New York law firm. He's played by George Clooney. The law firm's biggest case is a class action lawsuit with a company called U-North and that make a weed killer.
Which the weed killer kills more than weeds.
Yes.
It's kind of the key thing.
Yeah. The lead litigator for the law firm that Michael Clayton works for has decided to defect to the other side. He's learned so much about U-North and has had a crisis of conscience that he's actually going to release to the world how evil and terrible U-North is.
Yeah, he's found a document, an internal document, because this scene's actually about Arthur, not Michael Clayton himself. It's about Arthur, played by the late, great Tom Wilkinson. He has discovered the smoking gun, effectively, of the document where U-North knew their weed killer killed people, and they decided to not do anything about it. And they've been surveilling him. U-North have been surveilling him.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we discussed at length in the previous episode about how Tony Gilroy is a humanist and just sees so much, even in his quote-unquote villains or evil people, he loves bringing out their humanity. And this scene is actually about the general counsel of U-North, Karen, played by Tilda Swinton, and the man that she has hired, the leader of the team, Vern, to surveil Arthur. So that's the context of the scene that we're coming into.
Maybe we should listen to the scene. It is short.
It seemed to warrant my coming down.
You have to contain this.
Contain?
Right. Well, that's my question. What's the option that we're looking at along those lines?
You're talking about the paper, the data?
Well, I'm wondering if there is some other option. I mean, something I'm not thinking of.
We deal in absolutes.
Okay. I understand that. I do.
I mean, the material, the papers, I'm not a lawyer. We try, we do what we can.
Well, the other way
is the other way. Maybe you want to bring Don in on this.
No, this has nothing to do with Don. He's busy. This has nothing to do with Don. Do you think it's doable?
Yeah, we have some good ideas. You say move, we move. The ideas don't look so good, we back off, reassess.
Okay.
Is that okay? You understand, or okay, proceed?
So, Tom, why did you choose this scene? Why is this your example?
Primarily because it's full of subtext. Yeah. To me, this is the quintessential example of what we think of as subtext, where they are talking around a topic, and it goes to like what I tend to think of, like they have a tactic. She has to pretend she's not talking about what she's talking, and he has to pretend that she's talking about something else when they both know what they're talking about. And she's like, one of the lines that I love about something I haven't thought about, like such a great, like pretending that she's not the one offering. I'm not initiating this conversation, but she absolutely is. And so to me, it is, I want the option of, are we going to kill Arthur or not? And I want that on the table because all the other options are not acceptable. But the tactics is I'm not willing to admit that I'm initiating the conversation just in case I'm being recorded. I have the same, like my emails are full of subtext because I write every email with the assumption it will be made public.
Probably sensible.
Yeah. like, I have no idea where this is gonna be, so, like, I may get vicious emails from directors and stuff, and my reply is always, "Well, I'm just gonna assume the producer is gonna read this email." So this is what she's doing. Now, a good question about subtext is she preparing herself so she can convince herself later she didn't do it? She didn't make this choice. And I think that's another layer of subtext that we don't often think about. I just said I don't often think about or discuss. But I know, like, I can convince myself of a lot of things, and I can certainly convince myself of the righteousness of decisions. And I know I am sure I've got stories of bad decisions that I have done that I have mentally scrubbed over the years. Where it was, well, I had to do that, or I didn't mean that, or that was an accident when it really wasn't an accident. And we can convince ourselves of these things. And so, like, I'm curious is this just as much for herself to deny that she initiated the idea? Even though in this moment, it is purely like she's conscious of it, she's very aware of it.
I think so, yes. I mean, I think it's an interpretation, but I think part of what makes this scene fun, and it's a fun scene, is because you've got this thing of they're talking around this issue, but they actually need a clear understanding of what, like, how to do it. So it's like, how do you talk around about what we is, but make sure we're on the same page because there's no walking this back. You know, and it ends with Vern, the corporate spy, I guess, saying, you mean okay, you understand, or okay, proceed.
Yeah, it's great. Great line.
But I think that's what makes the scene fun, because they've got the tactics, but kind of the obstacle is the fact that they have to talk around it. So they're talking around this issue, and their obstacle is that they're actually talking around this issue.
Yeah. The subtext is the problem.
But, okay, so there is very clear subtext. They are not talking about putting a hit out on Arthur in the words that they're saying. So that's the subtext. They are arranging and discussing and workshopping putting a hit out on a human being without talking about that at all. So there's text and subtext. However, the text is not something else entirely, which is what we have in the Inglourious Basterds scene where they're talking about arranging a cinema and talking about Strudel.
Right.
They're not talking about anything else here. They're just trying very hard not to talk about the subtext. And I think, Tom, where you're coming from in terms of the character's internal drama about, is she avoiding talking about this not just in case she's being recorded, but is she avoiding talking about this because she internally does not want to be, as a person, responsible for murdering another person, I think is very deliberately structured by Tony Gilroy, by how we leave the scene. Because like you've just pointed out, she says, okay, and Vern comes back saying, you mean okay, you understand? Or okay, proceed?
Yeah.
And then she doesn't answer the question. And the action line that Tony Gilroy has written that we leave the scene on is, Vern nods, full stop, but hanging, full stop. Where are they? ? Still waiting for an answer as ... we cut out of the scene.
Yeah.
So he is very deliberately left us as the audience, and he's telling us as the reader that he's leaving us going, she has not confirmed in words that she is going to be responsible for the murder of a person.
It's not in the movie, but I'd be very curious if Gilroy would write the sequel to this scene where Vern says, she told me to do it. And what would her reaction be? Like, what would she say? Like, what would, like, I didn't tell you to do it.
We were discussing stealing the document.
Yeah. It's like, my God, man. My God, what were you thinking? But you told me. No, I did not.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's in the response to, and it's in the use of parentheticals throughout this script and in this scene is so fantastic. You mean okay, you understand, or okay, proceed, parenthetical silence, and then Vern saying, maybe you want to bring Don in on it. So she doesn't respond. The silence, he's feeling the silence, And we get his interpretation of what that silence means immediately, which is maybe we need to talk to Don about this, right? So obviously you're meaning you want to continue.
He's got such clear beats in his scenes.
Ugh.
He's such clear what emotion causes and creates the next beat. He's as good as they come with that.
Oh, yeah, Tony Gilroy. Yeah, I thought you meant Vern, but you actually mean Gilroy, speaking of subtext. But I mean, I think the structure of the scene, speaking of that, is really interesting, right? So we start with them listening to Arthur. Vern's like, I wanted this to bring this to your attention. He wants her to give him some instructions or directions, right? And she's like, yes. And the big print just emphasizes the awkwardness of this, an awkward beat, people, cars, life going by, right? And then Karen is like, asks him to contain it. And so the first kind of, the first third, I guess, the beginning of the scene is them listening to Arthur. The second little section, the section beat of this is Karen trying to get Vern to realize what she's asking, right? And then when he understands it, what he's asking, he's seeking confirmation, right? And then that last little beat is him seeking confirmation of, do I understand you correctly? That's kind of like, to me, how I interpret the structure of the scene. The midpoint is, I mean, I'm using the terms loosely, but it's like, to me, the midpoint of the scene where the scene hangs is when Karen says, and the other way, and Vern says, is the other way. And it emphasizes the heaviness of this, because in the big print, there's not much action lines or big print in this scene, but after he says, is the other way, the big print is heavy pause, life passing all around them. And I like that the script slows down for a moment, right? It could just use the word beat or put it in parenthetical, but they want to put you in the action line because they want you as the reader to sit with the implication of it, right? So it's a great bit of writing because this is like the storyteller subtext, right? They're using that tool to make sure we understand what she's gone into it. So we kind of catch up to Vern. I mean, I've seen this film a few times now, so it's hard to know what that first time experience was. But my memory is you're probably experiencing this scene more with Vern, right? You're coming in, he's giving it to her, you're kind of catching up to what she is saying with Vern, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is what you're asking for. And I think that line kind of does that.
Definitely. I mean, I love, because you're right, as they're starting to talk, she's trying to ask Vern, can you kill Arthur? And Vern thinks initially that she's talking about the report, because she's saying, you have to contain this. He responds, contain. She says, right, that's my question. Having not asked a question at all, I do enjoy that. Short of whatever else, something more. What's the option for something along those lines? That is just like word salad. That means absolutely nothing. And Vern responds, you're talking about the paper, the data. And so she's got to keep word salading at him until he understands. And, you were talking about parentheticals, Stu. The next one is one of the best parentheticals I've ever read. Karen says that there's a more limited option is what I'm asking. And then in parentheticals, it says cold sweat fumbling, something I'm not thinking of. And like, Tom, you brought up that line before because it's like, I'm trying to tell you something and I'm trying to tell you that I'm not thinking about it at all.
And then I love that Vern says we deal in absolutes, which is like, stop with your word salad. But again, that creates the subtext of the scene is that he is probably wants something more explicit, right? And I think he is growing frustrated with her.
Yeah, and that's why he asks whether she should bring Don in. Like,
well, it's like she's trying to inception him or something.
Yeah.
Something I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, so it's his idea, as you say. It's like her. I mean, maybe that's part of the subtext of this scene. The tactics is she wants him. She's trying to incept him, so it's his idea, and he knows that that's what she is trying to do.
Yeah.
So he wants her to be explicit, but he also works for her.
And also that moment down there and the other way is the other way. They've done it before.
Yeah.
They've done it before. Maybe not together, but Vern has. She hasn't, but Vern has. Because and the other way is the other way. that's not someone who's never had to make this choice.
And how much you get from that one line to read into that. I mean, this is just...
Yeah.
And clearly Don has previously instructed him to make this choice in the past. Because, like, maybe we should bring in the guy who will just tell me a yes or no answer on the murder. than you.
Yeah. Yeah. He's busy. He's very busy. He cannot. He's too busy to order a hit.
Yeah.
This scene is a total of like a page and a quarter, maybe a page and a third, and that it has 3 such clear movements in it that are so dramatically powerful without them at any point ever saying what they truly mean is incredible.
Yeah.
And look, coming back to subtext as a result, what we had to lay a bunch of groundwork about what the story was, Arthur, the implications of this information, right? So when we come into this scene, right, the audience is able to put together the pieces of what she is asking for, because we actually understand what's at stake for her as well, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of understand, we've already seen Vern and his kind of like ruthless efficiency. He's the kind of guy where the other way is the other way, right? And we've seen all that. So this scene can have these characters talking around each other and we fully understand what it is, what they're asking. And it's interesting. It's such a weird way to talk about it. But, when we edited the previous episode, we play the trailer for the movies or sections of the trailer as a way of introducing them. And I watched a bunch of trailers for MICHAEL CLAYTON. And even though this is a scene that everyone remembers from the film, it's not in the trailer, because I don't think if you have the information, you wouldn't know what they're talking about. You need the information beforehand to understand the power of those words, right?
And that it might very well be why subtext is essentially dead in movies, is because you just can't get a trailer full of subtext.
No.
You can't market subtext, man.
You have to market it by saying it's overrated, and then hopefully people read your newsletter and listen to a podcast on it.
Every line is literal.
Yes.
Coming this summer.
I mean, Chaz ended up reading, I did my usual thing. I send Chaz an article in the knowledge that he'll read it and then summarize it for me, which is, there was the article on the new literalism talking about the substance and this trend towards, or this trend to have an absence of subtext. So in modern movies.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's anyway. We'll get to that in the substance.
Yeah.
Speaking of the absence.
Because that was one of the examples they were calling, the writer was calling out.
I just want to note that Stu sent Chaz an article about how the substance has no subtext. And Chaz responded with, I want to talk about the subtext in the substance. This is a direct FU to either you or the writer of this article. And I don't know which one.
¿Por qué no los dos? But this scene is as fabulous as it is because, to Stu's point, the work that's gone in leading up to the scene is that we all have the same amount of information, the audience and both characters. Karen comes into the scene catching up to us.
Yeah.
But Vern and us as the audience, we know what Arthur's plan is. And Karen learns that information at the very beginning of the scene. She's hearing the recording that they have. So that's the pre-work that has gone into a scene like this, is putting all of it on the same, like orienting us as an audience. And then Tom, your description of their tactics is like how the tactics can be summarized so simply, but it's so beautiful. It's like, how can you have a meeting which needs a decision when no one in the meeting can actually talk about what the decision has to be or how it can be brought about?
Yeah. Like everyone wants everyone else to make the decision of the thing that they can't even talk about.
Yeah.
Sounds like every meeting ever.
But sublime, it's just because of those. To your point, Tom, I don't think Tony Gilroy sat down and said, I'm going to write the best subtext ever.
Yeah.
This scene evolves so beautifully from the tactics that the characters are adopting.
Yeah. Coming back to the structure, because I've looked at it again, the subtle shifts in tactics. So she brings up this containment thing. So her goal is to get it to contained. Her goal for the scene is to get it contained. And then she realizes when Vern says contain, she needs to get him to understand what that means, right? And then that beat from contain ? Ends with the is this the other way, right? That's the end of that first section. She then asks him, do you think it's doable? And then that other beat is the will she get him to agree to it? And that ends when Vern nods. The scene ends with Vern nodding. He's agreed to what she's asked.
Well, to my mind, they do actually want two different things. Like, as soon as they understand what they're talking about, which is most of the scene, is them mutually gaining a mutual understanding of what Karen is talking about, and then you've got the decision. But in that decision, the two characters want two different things. Karen wants Arthur killed, and Vern wants Karen to take responsibility for the decision of killing Arthur.
Yeah, even though Vern is already like, we have some good ideas.
Yeah.
Like, they've discussed it.
You mean okay, you understand, or okay, proceed?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good scene. And just from a writing standpoint or a writer's standpoint, you just have this scene on your board that says Karen makes the decision. And then it's just like, well, how much fun is that going to be to write? And then you just go in knowing this is going to be this, and this is this tactic, and this is this tactic. And then probably made the decision, I don't know, but probably made the decision in the writing of the scene that we were going to cut out before she actually makes a decision. Because otherwise there's no point to this scene. Yeah, like you would, like, unless the point is he had this idea for a scene where they had to talk about a hit but couldn't talk about a hit.
Yeah.
Which I tend to think is less likely. That tends to be the way you're going to execute a scene. But every now and then, of course, you have this idea of how you're going to execute a scene, and then that becomes like, where do I put that scene?
Yeah.
Because she doesn't make the decision.
That's actually a really profound revelation. The idea that the scene works and is in the movie because she doesn't make the scene. It doesn't make the decision. On screen.
Well, I mean, obviously someone makes the decision.
Someone does. Later we learn, yeah.
Arthur gets killed in a very chilling sequence that's trying to replicate real time and
apparently that makes the hit on Michael much easier to choose too.
Yeah.
Well, we never see we never see a similar scene about Michael. We just see and we understand that that's what they're doing with the car bomb.
She goes from like not being able to say it to just like, now she's got a Game of Thrones hit list.
Yeah, she General Counsel Cersei to
yeah. And it's one of my favorite lines from this film is later on where he's like, I'm not the guy you hit, I'm the guy you buy off. Like I'm so obvious. like I'm so corrupt and so obvious. How could you make this mistake?
Now, I'm conscious that we've got you for another hour, Tom, so I think we should move on to Inglourious Basterds.
We're going to be dropped into France dressed as civilians. We're going to be doing one thing only. Killing Nazis.
Yes, sir!
Members of the National Socialist Party have conquered Europe through murder, torture, intimidation, and terror. And that's exactly what we're going to do to them. We will be cruel to the German. And through our cruelty, they will know who we are. They will find the evidence of our cruelty in the disemboweled, dismembered, and disfigured bodies of their brothers we leave behind us. And the German will not be able to help themselves from imagining the cruelty their brothers endured at our hands, and our boot heels, and the edge of our knives. And the German will be sickened by us. The German will talk about us. And the German will fear us. Nazi ain't got no humanity. And they need to be destroyed. Each and every man under my command owes me 100 Nazi scalps. And I want my scalps. 9. Sound good?
Yes, sir!
So, as I mentioned before, the Inglourious Basterds scene that we're talking about is the infamous Strudel scene. But just to set up a little bit, Inglourious Basterds is the World War II fan fiction by Quentin Tarantino. It's possible. It's in my top 3 Tarantino films. So I really, really,
Is it really?
Yeah, I really, really like Inglourious Basterds. But as is Tarantino's wont, it follows a number of different storylines that all happen to conveniently come together in a glorious climax of violence and fire. But this particular scene, the film opens with Colonel Hans Lander, who's an SS. His nickname is the Jew Hunter, played by Christoph Waltz, murdering
There's some subtext for you.
murdering the entire family of Shoshana.
Famille plus longtemps. Donc, monsieur, mesdemoiselles, je prends congé de vous et je vous dis adieu.
And a few years later, Shoshana is being wooed. She's moved to Paris. She's assumed a new identity, hiding her religion and her ethnicity. She's now inherited a cinema in Paris. And she is being wooed by a Nazi sniper called Frederick.
Who's also becoming a movie star.
Yes, Frederick has become the star of Goebbels' latest propaganda exercise. And Frederick, as part of his attempts to woo Shoshana, wants the premiere of Goebbels and his movie to be at Shoshana's cinema. Now, the context of this scene is that Shoshana has just been told by a Gestapo major to get in a car, and she has no idea where she's going. And she shows up at a famous Parisian cafe, and there is Goebbels and Frederick. Now, I think the scene that we particularly want to talk about is the final third of this scene, but we recently did an episode on adolescence, Tom, the Netflix show, and we talked a lot about French scenes where the scene changes by the entrance and exit of characters, and that is definitely the case with this scene.
Oh, yeah.
There's an initial scene between Goebbels' French translator, Frederick, and Shoshana, and then Lander appears.
Ah, Lander, da sind Sie ja. Emmanuel, voici le colonel SS Lander. Il sera chargé de la sécurité pour la première.
He comes into the scene, sits at the table. There's then another scene with this new dynamic introduced by Lander, and obviously Shoshana trying very hard not to react to the fact that her family's murderer is sitting next to her. And then even more terrifying, Goebbels and Frederick leaves, and Lander asks to just have Shoshana stay behind so that they can have a one-on-one conversation that is the final movement or the final French scene within this larger scene. Is that a reasonable summary of where we're going to?
Yes. I think it's worth noting that his justification is a security concern.
Yes. I'm just going to quote one bit of action line, which is, the SS officer sits down and it's our old friend from the first scene, Colonel Hans Lander. Frederick introduces Emmanuel. This is Colonel Hans Lander of the SS. He'll be running security for the premiere. Close up on Shoshana. A bomb is dropped and detonated behind her eyes. But if she gives any indication of this, her war story ends here. The SS officer who murdered her family takes her hand and kisses it. So, like what we were saying earlier, Tarantino is screaming to us the subtext of this scene in the action lines.
And what's interesting is in the actual movie itself, he turns the music up to 11 at that moment too.
Oh, it's in the movie. That's what you read this and you watch the movie and it's close up and you're like, yep.
I will tell my students as I teach, it's interesting. I never made this connection till just now, but I will tell them, like, a director has this great tool of music in their movie, and you don't have that. And so your action lines have to play that role in your movie. It has to play the role of the musical score. And that's exactly what he does here when he says the monster that killed her family. That's the text version of the music that the score turns up in that moment in the movie.
I actually like that way to think about action lines being the music, because it's something that Chaz and I play with a lot, is revealing the interiority of characters in the action line or clarifying them in parentheticals or in big print. And some people ask us why, and I think now I can give the answer. It's like, it's the score, right?
Yeah.
If you need to, turn it up to 11, or if you need to cut it, right? You need to kind of drop the sincerity or whatever it is that you're playing with. You kind of actually have to use your big print to do it. And sometimes it's the fix. On our own script, there was a note for the producer saying this beat is awkward. And it's like, yes, the beat is meant to be awkward. And so we just wrote awkward beat.
Great.
Right?
Great.
As the parenthetical before the dialogue. So it's not like it's like that is
that's
deliberate. That is the point. And I think what is interesting about Tarantino, unlike Gilroy, is he definitely writes a lot of quote unquote music into his big print.
Yeah.
And it's funny that how much he plays with that. So you've got the narrator telling us things that are going on. You've got the flash cut to Goebbels having the affair with his translator, right? They're not making that as a subtext that's played within the scene. They are telling the audience that this is what's going on. But that's important because it means that when we see their relationship, we're not trying to guess. We're not being pulled out of the scene trying to guess whether Goebbels and his translator are having an affair. We know they're having an affair, and therefore we read into their interactions, right?
Oh, I was just like, I like the switch from the script to the movie too, because in the script, the focus is on her when they're having sex.
Yes.
And in the movie, the focus is on him making very pig-like noises during sex. And it's just like I'm just sure they just discovered that was more interesting and more dehumanizing of Goebbels or like whatever it is. It was just an interesting change from the first version of the movie to the final version of the movie.
It is an interesting change, and I think it kind of also reflects that in terms of the tactics of the scene, Goebbels in this first section, and we do want to talk more about the Strudel, but Goebbels is basically an egomaniac, right? He's a narcissist, and the whole scene is actually about him just talking about him.
And his spider-like fingers, which is just a great line.
But I think what's interesting about that is that obviously it has this point where he's trying to go to this idea that Shoshana will host the premiere, right? And so that's kind of the tactics of all of that, and and it inflates her importance. It inflates Frederick's importance, right, from his egomania.
And motivates it. It's great.
I mean, a couple of times it does point out in the action lines that as if Shoshana has any choice. I think it's twice throughout the scene. They ask Shoshana something, and in the action line it says, as if Shoshana has any choice in the matter.
And that's a similar thing is not replicated in the movie, though. That's what's kind of interesting.
Oh, it isn't?
No, because it's the question is there, and it is a commentary on the moment that's from Tarantino, but not Tarantino the director. Because it's not a moment in the movie. Like, we understand of like, hey, would that be okay? And she goes, uh-huh. And then, of course, we go, well, of course she has to agree. But there isn't that emotional beat where it's, well, of course, like I don't have a choice. So it's just it's an interesting commentary that has no dramatic equivalent when the film is executed.
Okay, so I do want to get into the Strudel, but I do want to, because it is interesting. It's like 3 pages of Goebbels waxing lyrical, right? What makes it, and obviously Tarantino is an incredibly gifted dialogue writer, but I think he's incredibly gifted at drama, which is why his dialogue is good. What is Goebbels' tactic here? If we're talking about like, what is subtext is the result of these, of drama, what's his goal here? What's his tactic here?
Well, he's certainly aggrandizing himself, just like the narcissist of taking over the table. But it's also interesting, a lot of it's cut. Like a lot of this doesn't make the final cut of the film. So at some point, you might have very well have had Tarantino going, what the hell what the hell is this all about? Let me just go ahead and cut it. There is a difference between scenes that are full, long scenes that are full and are dense. And then there are long scenes that are just long. And it's kind of, I think if you like history and you're interested in this sort of thing, but like Lucky Kids, like all that stuff, this is what there is irony to I'll be remembered for Lucky Kids when, of course, but there's a reason why it's cut from the final film.
And maybe it's the absence of subtext, right? As soon as she realizes that she's not been brought to the cafe to be interrogated and executed as a Jew in hiding, as soon as she realizes that, the narrative tension somewhat leaves the scene.
Yeah.
And that it's all about Frederick basically trying to convince Goebbels to use her cinema, and Goebbels, I think, just toying with Frederick, which
doesn't sustain itself for 3 pages.
Well, especially not when Shoshana is our point of view character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she is completely incidental to what's going on in terms of the tactics of the people in the scene. Like Shoshana's tactic is, I need to say as little as humanly possible, and the other two are the ones with an objective. And it's only when Hans arrives in the scene that the subtext is reignited, and it's just reignited pretty much through dramatic irony, through narrative point of view.
I mean, he literally interrupts the scene. In the script, they call out the fact that the uniform half enters frame. The bottom half of the uniform enters frame, and then he kind of takes over from that point of view. So we should dive into this back half of it. It's just interesting interrogating that, and it is good to realize that they did cut most of it.
Yeah,
probably because that subtext isn't as strong to hold it together.
There's no drama there.
So I've already mentioned the bomb going offline. Then once Goebbels and Friedrich and Francesca leave, I'm just going to read the action lines again, because Tarantino is telling us as the reader what we already know, but he's like drawing our attention to it because like this is why the scene is going to be, you're going to read dialogue about Strudel, but it's going to be tense as fuck. So everybody says their farewells. Colonel Lander offers the young Jew in hiding a seat at a small table in the outside patio area of Maxim's. The fluency and poetic proficiency of the SS Jew hunter's French reveals to the audience that his feigning clumsiness at French with Monsieur Lapadite in the film's first scene was simply an interrogation technique. So he's setting us up for the scene.
Yes, but also that no one in the audience got.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like this is like, it can be subtle as long as it's obvious. But this was not like, no one picked this up at all. No one.
But what you do get is, why does he want to talk to her? He suspects there. You actually kind of get the obvious part of all of this.
Yes.
I mean, what they're setting up is that what he's telling us in the action lines is he is a skilled interrogator, and this is going to feel like an interrogation. Which it does, from Shoshana's point of view. She is unaware and desperately wants to know, am I sitting in an interrogation or not?
And it means that when he just starts like, have you tried the strudel here? So it goes, interrogation technique. Have you tried the strudel here, right? Like on the big print, you feel the tonal shift, right? Which may be reflected in the music, right? So as much as you're saying that no one in the audience got this subtle bit of, I mean, this is to me like directing the actor. This is a great bit of direction for the actor, which is, Christopher, your French in the beginning of the film is going to be clumsy. It's not going to be clumsy here. That's something the audience is going to hear, but it's not going to be, and that you can play, but it's not going to be something that they're consciously aware of. But what it does do on the page is mean that there is a tonal shift to this second half that says this is an it's going to feel like an interrogation, which it does. I think in the way it's shot and probably the way its music is played, it feels more of an interrogation. I certainly remember the first time, this is one of those many tense scenes in this film. It's like the underground bar scene is the other big one that we also considered doing, that the tension just ramps up and it's just people having normal conversation, but you can really feel the tension here. because we know she's a Jew in hiding. And that's the important thing from the earlier beat. It's reminding us of the reader, what's at stake for her, right? And the irony, what she's trying to hide and not reveal. So that's kind of the coming back to the tactic. This isn't the tactic of what she wants to reveal. This is the tactic of what she doesn't want to reveal.
Yeah.
And then us filling the gap of him. What's interesting is we don't actually know why he's there. He just says he wants to discuss a security concern. So we kind of feel the void of information.
And I'm certainly not being critical of Tarantino, who is certainly, one of our best writers. He's just one of our best writers. But like, of the 3 interrogation scenes, this to me is the least effective.
Yeah, right.
Like the opening one is incredibly effective. Like that's, to me, it's one of the great scenes in cinema. The scene at the bar, which as you start to suspect that this officer suspects this officer isn't who he says he is. Both those scenes, people were asking questions in an effort to get more information. Whereas in this scene, I think it leans way too much on, we know that she's a Jew. We know who he is. But he seems somewhat uninterested. And he says this is a formality. And of course, you hear that and you think, well, that's probably not true. That's probably a interrogation technique. But it seems at the end of the scene that was in fact true.
Yeah.
That he suspects nothing.
Unaware. Yeah.
He's unaware, suspects nothing, makes no decisions or choices that lead him down one path or another path. He is just being polite to the girl that Goebbels. And so to me, there's a potential of tension that never fulfills itself and then falls flat at the end.
This is interesting because I think this kind of connects back to a somewhat similar version of the zone of interest thing. This is subtext, the filmmaker's subtext, right?
Yeah.
In a way that, as you say, we're interpreting his questions as an interrogation, and Tarantino is working very hard for us to feel that, to the point when he orders the glass of milk. And I remember that moment when he goes, "Oh, can I have a glass of milk?" It calls back to the beginning of the film when he does the same thing, when it actually writes in the big print. Considering that show, Sana grew up in a dairy farm, and the last time she was on a dairy farm, her Strudel companion murdered her entire family. His ordering her milk is, to say the least, disconcerting.
Now, but did you feel that in the scene when you saw it?
I found it disconcerting.
Okay.
Yes, I did. The first time I saw it, I did find like my tension ramped up. But as you say, that's not a tactic from him. That's her experience of it.
Yeah.
And the ending of the scene is her literally having pissed herself.
Yeah.
Because what I think the filmmaker's intention of this, the subtext from the filmmaker's or the storyteller's point of view, is to make us realize how under threat she is in every part of her life. That these guys are scary even when they're not trying to scare you. For someone like her.
Yeah.
And I think for me it works like that, but I think this is that other type of subtext. It's not theme, it's not meaning, it's the storyteller trying to make us feel something in a particular way. In this case, I think to help us empathize with her.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why just filmmaking is just so damn hard.
Oh yeah.
Like it is just so much harder than it looks. Because I think the experience he wants the audience to have is the experience you have. And the experience that I had was, oh, this is going to be another tension. Like, this is going to be another. And then it feels like a letdown. And then I had just read the script from you guys. So, like, I only knew the movie up to this point, which kind of shows her a moment of, like, that tension and fear releasing. Which I just from a personal standpoint would like to have seen longer. I thought it cut too short on just how of just what that would be like to try to pretend to keep a secret and hold that tension, and then you have a single moment where it's allowed to go.
Yeah,
I would like to have seen what that looked like a little longer, but I like what you're saying. To me, the scene where, oh my God, is this interrogation? And then the realization of, no, he literally is just asking formally. And to have that, my God, he was just being like going through polite, and
Mhm.
she practically vomited, and she peed herself in the script.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I had felt that version of the scene, like, which I think is what you're saying, like you felt that version of the scene, then it would have been like, I was like, oh my God, what a great scene. But it's why filmmaking is so hard of like, how do you give everyone in the audience the experience you want to give them while everyone in the audience feels like they're the only ones who had that private experience?
Yeah.
Without everyone having different, because then if everyone's different, you're not in control. You're not telling a story. And he's like obviously one of our best. So it's just a difficult craft.
Yes, it is. To put it in the context of like what works well about this and not is, again, he hasn't gone into it going, Landa is talking about something else. He's not. He is pure text. He is talking about strudels and cinema security. There is no subtext whatsoever to the dialogue that Landa is in control of.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where we're talking about the subtext of, is it the characters are aware of it, which is what is in Michael Clayton, versus the irony created by the filmmakers and the dramatic situation, which is what we have here. And I think potentially what you're missing, Tom, is Shoshana's tactic is to not give herself away.
Sure.
She desperately wants to know what Hans knows. And in fact, this is once again called out in the action lines. So right after that line that Stu, you read out before about how disconcerting the ordering of the milk is, it says the key to Colonel Landa's power and or charm, depending whose side you are on, lies in his ability to convince you he's privy to your secrets. Right? So Shoshana desperately wants to know, do you know who I am?
Right. But that's in the text of the script. Is that in the scene?
Well, I think it is in the scene. Like, she's fearful, but
because if he knows who she is, it's this. What's the point of the scene?
Well, I think he's established with us in the first scene that he likes toying with people. So, this is obviously a direct callback to the first scene. Is he toying with her or is he not?
Yeah.
And I think potentially the issue that you're missing that you feel in those other interrogation scenes is that Shoshana's tactic here is to not reveal herself. She's got an objective, which is, I want to know, is this an interrogation or not? But her tactic cannot go towards that dramatic objective at all.
Right.
She just has to hide what she's feeling. Whereas in those other two scenes, Monsieur Lapedite has an objective and his tactic aligns with that objective to hide the family under the floor. And in the later scene, the Michael Fassbender character, I can't remember the name of his character, but in that interrogation in the bar underneath, Michael Fassbender's character has tactics to try and counter the suspicion.
Sure.
He goes into a long story about where his German accent comes from, and the actor character is also playing along with that. So that's where the movements of the scene and the drama and the tension can shift within the scene because of the tactics available to the characters. So this one scene, there's no dramatic movement. We looked at a one-page scene with Michael Clayton where there was 3 dramatic movements. In this scene, it is the same drama throughout. It's just tension, which Tarantino is a master at. I'm not saying that that's a negative thing. Like, he can sit in tension for so long, but maybe that's what you're missing in comparison to those other scenes is
maybe
the lack of tactics available to the characters. And as a result of those lack of tactics, there's a lack of dramatic movement to the scene.
I really like your comment about the filmmaker's subtext here, though. Like, I think this is a really good example of what I think the light bulb went off when you said of like, here's the filmmaker's tactics, because we eventually learned Landa has no real subtext here.
Yes.
Like, we eventually learn that he is just a formality, that this woman was literally introduced to him by Goebbels.
Yeah.
Like, he's not looking or thinking anything, but he's polite and, he forgets the cream. And so there's all these long moments of like, don't do the strudel with the strudel. So to me of like, oh, well, like we're being told there's subtext by the filmmaker because she's trying to figure out what the subtext is.
Yeah.
But in actuality, there isn't the subtext.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I wanted to me to have felt that was like when it was done to have understood that from the scene and watching the scene rather than in a podcast discussion. I wanted to understand it in the moment and go, oh, that's poor. Like she thought she was in interrogation and she wasn't. And what an awful, awful life. So like now that we talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, this is really good. You know, like, okay. But again, if like going back to it can be subtle as long as it's obvious of what is the experience, what is the shift and the change in the scene. And it always feels because it's just for fun because we're talking about Tarantino. So like we're talking about is it a 99 out of 100 or is this a 98 out of 100? And like that's the debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it is interesting just coming back to this filmmaker subtext because unlike Michael Clayton, he is doing a lot of work he's writing a lot of music in his action lines here.
Yeah.
Because he's wanting an effect that isn't arising from the drama of both characters. Like, I certainly think we need to understand what she's thinking on the page for him to have the effect that he is looking, which us sitting with her believing something is in interrogation when it is not. And I definitely lean a little bit more into the that's what I've learned from reading Tarantino scripts is this kind of writing of sometimes you just got to write in the...
Oh, I think you should. Yeah, you absolutely should.
This is the guy from the beginning of the film that murdered her old family.
Absolutely.
Because you will remember that when he sits down, you will recognize that face because there is literally a face to it. Whereas on the page, writing Colonel Lander brings up none of those emotions. So I think...
No. Watching a movie and reading a script are two different experiences.
Yeah.
And you have to create that experience of the movie for the reader.
Yeah.
You have to.
You have to. I mean, that's absolutely the best writing advice I was ever given back when I was at the VCA, which is the film school I went to, was write the experience. And I've clung to that ever since. And in fact, I think our podcast is all about that and maybe why we like what you write about screenwriting and what you talk about, because it's the same thing. It's how do you recreate the movie experience on the page?
Yeah.
And this is Tarantino trying to do something because he has this idea in mind of, and it's, we're talking about the experience for the audience. I do think it's about putting us in the experience of Shosanna as well. And he is writing about it as, it's not that it's scary for us, it's that it's scary for her. This is the guy that murdered her family. She is feeling anxious, all that stuff. It is about how his presence makes her feel. But as you say, there is less there's less complexity in the shifting here. It's him sitting in the tension.
Yeah.
There's like a couple of shifts, but they're very small. She kind of blabbers a bit and he says there's no reason to feel anxious.
Yeah.
And then she shifts to very short answers, right, in response. But he doesn't seem to pick up on that. It would have been interesting if he's like, you've just gone from blabbering to being really short. And then when they bring up Marcel, her African projectionist, and he picks up on that and he talks about the Negro, et cetera, the tension rises again.
Yeah.
But then he's like, oh yeah, no, I can see how that works. And then it dissipates. So you've got these ebbs and flows, but it's not like these shifts in the same way that we see in Michael Clayton.
Yeah, it doesn't escalate. It shifts, but it doesn't escalate.
Interestingly enough, all the substance does is escalate in madness.
That is a pretty amazing segue. Well done, Stu. So can we move on to the substance, Tom?
Yes, let's go over the 67 pages of the substance that you sent to me.
I've only highlighted one page.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself. This is the substance. perfect balance of 7 days each. The one and only thing not to forget. You are one. You can't escape from yourself.
There's been a slight misuse of the substance.
This balance is not working!
Would you like to stop? Would you like to stop? Would you like to stop? Would you like to stop?
I'm fine.
To be clear, so we came into this with Tom's article is called Subtext is Overrated. And I was like, all right, what film is an example of how subtext is overrated? And to put my cards on the table, I really love the substance, but I also think any criticism leveled at it, like in this New Yorker article, that it is obvious is fair. It is the most obvious film I think I've potentially ever seen.
Why is obvious a criticism?
That's where I disagree with the whole premise of this article in the New Yorker. But they were like, Honora and the substance are too literal. They're the new literalism. They're very obvious. But then was like, but Conclave and Furiosa, by contrast, are like the films that we should aspire to have with more sort of subtlety and grace. I'm like, Furiosa?
That is an odd mix in that four. It is such an odd criticism of calling something obvious. It's bizarre to me. Now, untruthful, uninteresting, so obvious to the point where I didn't believe the moment. Like, I get that, but the problem isn't obvious. The problem is you didn't believe the moment. Like it didn't make you feel anything. And so, translating that or interpreting that as obvious is, I don't want to dive down the argument or like down this road, but it really is such an elitist interpretation of it should, like, some people shouldn't get it. I should be the only one who gets it. And if other people get it, it bugs me. That's kind of like the heart of an elitist argument.
Yeah, well, I think there seemed to be a conflation between subtlety and originality, right? That because there's no audience reaching for meaning, that means the experience is uniform and unoriginal, whereas the substance, I mean, we should probably summarize it at some point. And Stu, you've seen it more recently than me, or Tom, if you're keen to have a go at summarizing the substance, by all means. But it was a completely original experience for me.
Yeah, oh yeah, from every perspective.
Yeah,
how it was filmed, how it was told. There's certainly thematically, I would say maybe it's not the most original, but it's universal. And it's a tale as old as time, like it is the heart of human nature of feeling like you're aging out of life. And what do you do about it? Do you embrace where you are, or do you try to recapture youth? And it's told from the perspective of a celebrity, but that's also just a plain old, you could have a midlife crisis. You could have told that exact same story from a 52-year-old. You could have told the exact same story, and they do, from an 80-year-old who does it. And then they get to the younger version of themselves. And to me, like, what makes it original is how they told this story. And how surreal just the editing is, like the choices it makes, all the things that it doesn't even bother to explain.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I know you guys are both, we've got an Australian phrase here, Tom, maybe you know it from your time here, of that you both are paying me out. You're both teasing me for choosing 67 pages of script. But what I really my experience of the film was, when I was watching it, was that it ended multiple times. It was almost Lord of the Rings in its like, oh, and here's another ending, and here's another ending. Like, I kept expecting a cut to black, and then there was another sequence where it was making the exact same point, but just as Stu, to what you said earlier.
Yeah.
But it escalated. So it just kept ending, escalating, ending, escalating, ending, escalating along the same point. And it was just hammering home its meaning.
In some ways, it's by the by. I actually found reading the script ending was a lot more of a forward, cohesive experience than the ending of the film itself. The one thing the script did is ended up making a joke of the flash titles, because we've got the three characters and it kind of introduces their names in these big, bold fonts, and then Monstro Ella Sue is kind of on the screen, and in the film it's the last one, but at the end of the script that actually turns into a gag because every version of her that falls off gets its own title card. And in some ways that actually makes it feel more cohesive to me. But I think I kind of reacted to in this sequence, what I reacted to was it still tried to give us insight and access to the character.
Definitely.
Of these 60 billion pages you've sent us, Chaz, what I picked up on was just after it introduced the text. And I actually love that it actually uses the giant font. It uses literal big print.
Yeah.
In the actual script. It uses like big Helvetica font against black in the script to give us that experience. But it's this bit after we've introduced the monster. So she's cloned herself using the technology.
Should we summarize the...
Sorry.
No, I kept talking. Chaz offered, do you want to summarize it? And I said, I have an opinion instead. So I'd be happy to try to summarize this. And
Go for it, Tom.
And I'd be curious. It is about a celebrity fitness trainer who is on TV, and played by Demi Moore, and she gets older, and it's very, very clear they want to replace her. I believe she even gets fired.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets a message about the substance, which offers her essentially youth back. And she takes the substance, she injects herself, just kind of throwing herself into the void, no real idea of what's going to happen. And as a result, a younger version of herself crawls out of her back. And there are now two versions of herself and a quote unquote better, younger version of herself.
Mm-hmm.
But they are different people, but yet they are the same spirit. And as the movie keeps reminding us and them that you are one.
Yeah.
But you can only be conscious only one body can be conscious at a time. But as the younger version keeps grabbing more and more of her time, she is stealing time from the older version of herself and then mutating her body more and more until she turns into you think the total monstrosity. And then her younger version of herself until the older regular monstrosity is like, I've had enough. And she tries to kill the other version.
Yeah. I mean, they both try to kill each other. So,
and then when she realizes, they kill each other or try to kill each other.
So the Demi Moore character is called Elizabeth, and the younger, better version played by Margaret Qualley is called Sue.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a wonderful scene.
It's even more surreal than the scenario I just gave you.
Yeah. I mean, surreal is right. And maybe this film doesn't have subtext because it's surreal.
It's very dreamlike. It's edited like a dream.
Mm-hmm.
It ends like the final phase of a bad nightmare.
Yeah. But in amongst all of that, in these multiple endings, in this long extended sequence where the film ends, Stu, you were observing that the big print or the action lines of the script still are trying to put us in the character's understanding or perspective.
So the moment I'm reacting to is we see this vicious, violent fight between Elizabeth and Sue. Elizabeth lies dying. Sue kind of goes to do her New Year's Eve party, and that in a way acts as a talisman in the film. There's basically a billboard sign, the world's biggest billboard, right out her window that she always glances to. And it's interesting looking at the script as they've cut dialogue from it. There's this like people that call her and stuff, and now she just needs to look at the billboard and we get everything we need from it. And she goes to the New Year's party and she starts literally falling apart. Her teeth fall out, her ear falls off. So she comes back with this plan to make a better, younger and better version of herself. And this is the young Sue. So Sue injects herself with the substance, and we have a horrific thing, and she emerges as like a Cronenbergian monster, right? Like straight out of I was going to say Rick and Morty, because the Cronenbergians are in Rick and Morty, but they got their name from someone. I don't know who they would call Cronenberg after. And we get the monster Ella Sue, right? And so in the script, and I love this, in the script they have literal big print. They've got in giant white text against a black block, Monster Ella Sue, and they use this device in the script, which I love. It is the experience of the film in the script of how impactful those moments are. A monstrous vision, a being with a hybrid face, shapeless and hideous, chaotic cellular growth, body parts placed haphazardly, all the wrong places. This is how they describe her. But then we have a moment when she looks herself in the mirror and she wipes her mouth and turns her head from right to left as she looks at herself in the mirror. She's strangely calm, as if this monstrous vision didn't scare her, almost fascinating her, as if it pleased her, as if she was truly seeing herself for the very first time and finally accepting herself. And then it says a little bit later on, because we see her try to get ready for the New Year's Eve party, she has the exact same gestures of vanity as if everything were normal, which is even more weird and scary, giving her completely monstrous appearance. Mm-hmm. So there's two things going here. There's the subtext for the actor, which is you're going to look at yourself and you're going to accept yourself even though you're this monster. And then there's this big print, which I understand now what it is. It's this kind of filmmaker storyteller subtext, which is this is going to be weird and scary because she's acting if everything's completely normal and it isn't. And so it's telling us in the big print. And yes, this is literalism, but it is actually a pretty good indication of the tone she's going for in this end part of the film. And it is fascinating to watch because for me, my experience of this, I didn't get the idea that Monster Ella Sue was accepting herself truly. What I got was the disconnect between her unable to see what she looked like, right? Mm-hmm. And the weirdness of it, right? And for me, the film didn't completely stick the landing. I was confused by what it was trying to say because it's this idea of she's going through the routine and she is acting like nothing has changed, right? And she goes up on stage. So I guess I did get that from a plot point of view, this idea that she's going to go, that she's not shocked by her hideous anymore.
I'm so happy to be with you tonight. I've missed you all so much.
But then everyone turns around and calls her a freak and attacks her.
The monster! Shoot the monster! It's a freak! No! Shoot the monster! Don't whisper!
And ultimately, she dies on her star. And so the film was kind of saying to me that she was wrong to finally accept herself and that really she should have stayed herself as Sue. That's kind of the complexity. Like I wasn't sure what the meaning of the film was in that contradiction, right? Mm. I mean, that's just a personal experience. From a writing point of view, what I picked up on is it still gave us access to character and it gave us the tonal aspects, the filmmaker, the storyteller's subtext. He was trying to bring that out on the page so we understood the tension.
Yeah. And can I highlight one other moment that I thought was excellently written, which was before she converts into the monster, when Sue has murdered Elizabeth and she's gone to the studio and bits are starting to fall off her. And the action lines read, her toothless smile gets bigger and bigger, like the black holes of a harmonica, a black hole into hell. She stares down at the 3 teeth in the palm of her hand, the enormous and bloody roots. It's as if her hidden dark side was suddenly coming to light. So, yes, it's not necessarily playable. It's telling us what the metaphor is. It's telling us, the reader, the meaning that we might not get from screen. But it is what I find interesting. And in a film that's so much about theme, it is still deeply focused in what this means to Sue or to Monstro Elisu. But yeah, Tom, because I don't think you hadn't seen The Substance until I suggested it for this topic?
I can't remember the chronology, but I certainly, I think it was somewhere around the same time. So
Yeah.
I either had just seen it or this motivated me to like, oh damn, we're going to talk sometime in the next 18 months. I need to see this movie. Yeah, I still am on the fence about this as far as the subtext goes, because I don't think the like the filmmaker and what's going on, everything seems to be completely in sync to me. And I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But I still feel like maybe like there is certainly these moments of like she puts a picture of her old self on her face, right? Like there's clearly and this is total denial. She's in total denial of what's going on, but then everyone kind of buys it for like when she enters, like they accept that she has this picture on her face. So that was kind of when, like, you would think it was when the person crawled out of the other person's back that I would have went, oh, this is a surreal story. But it really was, it wasn't until like there was just moments of no obvious emotional truth to it where I went, oh, this is very dreamlike. This is surreal. This doesn't care anymore. This only cares about the raw emotion, not necessarily the emotional truth of plot or anything like that. So, like you, Stu, I did not get the sense of acceptance. I got the opposite sense of denial. Of I will just put a picture on my face and pretend that that's me. And, there's no good reason from a story point of view to just hose down that house with blood and gush other than just punishment, like you're involved in this too. Like the audience is just as at fault for all of this. Not only you're applauding, but your sudden hatred as well. And so everyone here is going to get what they deserve. Because plot-wise, it makes no sense, like there's not enough blood in that little body. But it's like, so for me, as far as like the subtext goes, I definitely lean more into, I think this is, I define theme as the ideas and values that are rewarded or punished within a movie. And within a story, and that's it. Like characters behave a certain way, and certain actions are rewarded or certain actions are punished, and whatever those ideas and values that get you to the end is essentially a theme. And if you want to make a thematic statement out of it, you certainly can too. So to me, this third act is pure resolution of a thematic statement.
Yeah. So that's what you mean by the word punishment. She's not I mean, she has literally punished them by spraying with blood, but you're talking about the consequences of this thematic idea being explored. The values ends up in the people that follow those values being punished for those values, right? Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, rewarded or punished. But yeah, like you look at her decisions of she was unable to accept herself, right? Like, and she was punished for it. And in the end, all these people who put this value onto, we're going to throw away the old one. We want the new one. And so that value is essentially punished. Now, you could certainly reward that with irony and go, well, that wins, like valuing that. But they don't really go that way of like we got rid of the old person and we all were rewarded for it. And so like there isn't that thematic statement about, yeah, that wins. That point of view wins. Always get rid of the old person. Like that's so like I still struggle. Whereas like with the Tarantino scene, like that idea of filmmaker, storyteller, subtext rings very, very true. And it's such a great way to look at it. I never looked at it that way before, and I really appreciate it. This one I still struggle because everything is so in line with itself thematically that I feel like it's broaching into that territory.
Yeah, I guess maybe what it is just irony, right? Irony, the structure, is something that the filmmakers have control over, right? We got control over tone, but we've got control over irony. So there's obviously irony at work with Inglourious Basterds. We've got the story in our head of we know who he is, we know she is.
Yeah.
So we've got the two stories coming back to where we're in the beginning, right? And there is a slight disconnect between the story in our head and the story in his head. We're kind of filling the void of it. And here there is irony, which the script is trying to paint for us, which is that she's acting completely normally, even though it's really weird and gross. And we can interpret that in at least two ways, which is she's accepting who she is or she's in denial of who she is. I don't think the film tells us which one that is. I think probably I read it like you as denial. I think that's a better word, even though the script's saying that she's accepted. But I feel like that is kind of sitting as just a tool, right? Like in some ways, is it theme or is it subtext? Does it matter? I'm not sure, right?
Like this is all fun conversation. Does it really matter? Like,
yeah. As a storyteller, both as a screenwriter and as a director, it's about what tools can I use to create the emotions that I want.
Right.
And what's interesting is there is kind of an absence of tactics here. Not quite true. Like she's definitely trying to not reveal something about her. I love that idea of tactics is about not revealing stuff. So her tactics is when her teeth are falling out. She tries to, in the script, they cut it out of the movie. In the script, she tries to glue the teeth back in.
Yeah.
Right. So she's trying to not reveal that she's falling apart until she can no longer do that. And she goes to go and find a new tactic, which is inject herself with the substance. So there is stuff going on. And then I suppose her then dressing herself up in the dress and sticking the face on is this tactic of my goal is to still do the show. So it's in there, but it's not there's no oppositional force.
Yeah.
There's no Vern that she's trying to convince, there's no opposition to her. Like the AD just lets her in, as you say. I mean, I kind of buy that the idea is thank fuck the talent here is just go. Someone else makeup will deal with this. Wardrobe will deal with what they turn up with. I'm just the AD. I get you to set, right?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, in the script, I can't remember if they've edited it out of the movie, but the AD letting her in is a fantasy. It's what she's imagining happens when she knocks on the door, and then it comes back and she's still outside the door, and the action line of the script actually calls it out that the fictitious bubble has been burst. But I do think there is an antagonist. The audience is the antagonist, right? Her tactic is to stand up on stage and say, love me looking the way that I do. And she wants them to explain. She's trying to explain. She's trying to tell them it's still me, it's still Sue, it's still the person that you love.
Yeah.
And they they can't, and they turn on her. But that's getting it's so sort of not the point of what the text is trying to tell us, that like who monster Eliza Sue, like Stu, I think you're right. It's only after you pointed it out, to me the biggest contradiction within the story as it's being presented to us is her stapling the face or sticking the face of the Demi Moore of Elizabeth onto her face. If she had truly accepted herself and loves what she was seeing, she wouldn't do that. So I think the script is telling us that Monster Eliza Sue accepts us, and I felt watching it that it wasn't so much denial, just like it was compulsion. Like, I have to go to the show, even though I now look like this. Like I have no choice. So it's interesting that we've all got different reads of that ending.
For so much for obvious.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. For a film that's meant to be literal, we're all like, subtle interpretations. And maybe that was the point of the ending. What they're trying to go for is to escalate into that kind of more what Chaz and I would call a thematic sequence, that there's kind of like a Brechtian distancing effect that's meant to make us go, what is this all about? What are you trying to say? And have those discussions about, on another level, it's younger Sue. It would have been interesting if it was younger Sue stapling, like she stapled young Sue's, there's only one Sue. Instead of Elizabeth's face, it's Sue's face. So it's, Sue, who's always been like, I'm the young person, I'm amazing, suddenly getting the experience of being no longer wanted, right? And desired. But I mean, I think it's the symbolism is there. It's women, women destroying themselves and their bodies to appease others. Appease this kind of patriarchal, misogynistic culture, right? And in the script, and I don't think it's as much in the movie, like Alan in the script clearly gets fired for what he has done. So as you say, he is punished for the consequences of his decisions, right? But I don't think it changes anything. I mean, maybe that's the cynicism of the script, right? That Alan is now, he's just going to get replaced by someone else. They'll find someone else new and younger to replace Alan.
Yeah.
And they're all just going to forget who Elizabeth is. I mean, I love the symbolism and the imagery of the star that it opens and closes with. The star on the sidewalk, the overhead shot, amazing. And I think this is part of what makes this film work, is the two previous scenes that we did are very dialogue heavy, right? We're now doing something that's very imagistic. And I think part of what makes its power is that it's, as you say, it's all text, but the text isn't words. Like it's not what they're saying. The text is in the imagery and the symbolism it's choosing to use.
Yeah. And still, like certainly there's so many memorable scenes in this movie, but my favorite scene is when she can't go out on that
date.
To meet on that date. Like, she can't bring herself to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the one that really sits with me. And of like, it's how, I mean, it was kind of too late at that point, but like, it would have been a different outcome if she was able to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Because we're talking about a scene where Elizabeth, the Demi Moore character, has actually bumped into an old, I think, high school friend, and he's asked her out on a date. And so that is like...
And she decides to call him. So that's early on. And then she kind of is confronted with people saying you have no value. And she realizes this is a guy who has specifically said to her, you're still the most beautiful person I've ever met.
Yeah.
So she decides to call him in a moment of connection, right? Or seeking connection. And we feel hopeful for her.
Yeah. And then she stands the guy up.
And she looks amazing.
She looks great.
Yeah. She can't force herself to leave the apartment despite looking amazing, because she can't reach the standards of beauty that she once had and that Sue has. And it is devastating. But, talking about the argument, like, if she had accepted herself looking the way she looked and left, then she would have been rewarded for doing so. And instead she is punished for buying into the...
Yeah.
That is an amazing scene. And that is a scene with subtext.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
because she can't confront the truth of who she is in that particular scene. And what is interesting is, I mean, we've chosen the ending for a particular reason because it is pushing more into the thematic.
Yeah. And like so much of subtext is your fear,
Mhm.
you know, of like what you don't reveal. And so,
Yeah.
and like, because we tend to think in terms of tactics as what you want,
Yeah.
which is true. Like that's vitally important. But like a lot of times the obstacle is your fear, you know, like that. And what she wanted was a connection, but her fear was stronger.
Yeah.
And like you were, it was so painful to watch because you knew like, just get over it. Yeah. He's kind of weird. Like he's not the superstar you normally, but like he actually likes you and thinks the world of you.
Yeah.
And she just can't do it.
You're still the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world.
Hello.
Hi, Fred. It's Lizzie. Hello?
Sorry, I'm in shock. Wow. Wow. I thought I'd never hear from you again after.
Oh gosh, no, not at all. I've just been really busy lately. So listen, I was thinking that maybe we could get together and grab a drink. Are you still there?
Sorry, I'm in shock again.
Oh.
I could book Luigi's at 8?
8 at Luigi's, it is. I will see you tonight.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
So, Tom, I'm aware that you've got to go in 3 minutes.
Yes.
So how we normally end this is, did you take any key learnings from this exercise? Now, acknowledging that we came into this with your tools from your from your blog and your newsletter, that we will, if anyone wants to find Tom's newsletter, please check out the show notes. But did this change or expand your views that subtext is overrated and it all comes back to character tactics and fear?
I have not changed my my stance on that at all. But to me, like these are all good examples of like how you approach it, and each time the story demanded the choices that were made in the scene. And you know, you like, where's the tension coming from? Is the tension coming from the subtext, where like thematically? And so I think people get in trouble. We started talking about it, like we opened the podcast with, you know, Stu talking about of like people like, I want subtext in my scene, and the scene will tell you if there's going to be subtext, and how you choose to execute the scene will tell you. It is your tactic as the storyteller of whether you need subtext or not. Subtext is a result. It's still just a result. But I like your perspective of sometimes we give the audience subtext as filmmakers, as storytellers. We imply a subtext that may not actually be there because of the way we constructed the scene.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I said this on mic or off mic. Where I got to in doing this homework is there's subtext that the characters are aware of. Am I trying to talk about something else than what I'm actually talking about? And then there's the subtext that the filmmakers are in control of. Am I wanting the audience to know that there's something else going on underneath this scene than what the characters may or may not be aware of? Like Hans Landa was completely oblivious to all the subtext of the scene in Inglourious Basterds.
Yes.
And I think focusing on what the audience is aware of coming into the scene is just going to be way more powerful than focusing on the characters. I mean, but maybe that's not fair. That was my understanding coming in. But the Michael Clayton scene, the joy of that scene, why it's so exquisite, is purely from the characters and their tactics.
Right, but it's still there for us.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, which is why we're privy to the scene, which is why we're seeing it.
Yeah.
The most fundamental choice of a storyteller is what scenes are you showing the audience? We show them that scene. We don't show the scene that when they're choosing to plant the car bomb, give the decision to kill Michael Clayton, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to end with, and I love doing this. This is the car bomb at the end of the episode. I didn't mention it earlier. One of the few good YouTube videos I've seen on Subtext, and I would use it for teaching, is from the best screenwriting channel, I think, on YouTube. Because they basically think like how we think, which is called Raising the Stakes, and they've got a video on what is subtext. I may just define it as the gap between explicit meaning and implicit meaning.
Yeah, it's my buddy Jonathan's channel.
Oh, well, there you go. It's great.
Yeah, Jonathan's fantastic.
And what I like about this presentation is that subtext is a spectrum. If it's just the gap between explicit and implicit meaning, right, it can vary. And so I think the question when someone goes, this scene needs more subtext, is actually what that is storytelling questions about not adding more subtext. It's like, maybe it's missing emotional truth, right? Maybe it's missing the reason the characters are choosing to reveal or not reveal information, right? And so it's going to go back to your characters, or it's going to be going back to what the audience knows, and therefore, what do we need them to not say? If the characters know this, do they need to talk about it? No. But how do we then tell the audience? I think obviously we didn't answer that question in the podcast. We're at the end of it, but I think that's kind of what I would be thinking about.
Yeah.
It's not that I've ever gotten that note.
You're not being obvious enough, Stu.
Yeah, I mean that's the dilemma for modern screenwriters now. All that term, people apparently are getting notes of like, you need to make this more obvious. People are watching this, while playing with their phones. But that's a discussion for another time.
And sometimes you do. I mean, it is, to me, it's the barrier of emotional truth is the criteria. Make it more obvious is not a bad note.
Yeah.
Make it so obvious that you lose emotional truth is a bad note.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes being obvious is the emotional truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Tom, I know we're just a couple of minutes over. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing us. If you liked this format, we would love you to come back on. And if you can think of like another topic that you would love to explore with these two random Australians.
Absolutely. Let's grab Jonathan. Then
oh yeah, that'd be good.
Because you were saying like what I think is the best channel on screenwriting on YouTube, and I was thinking I got to tell him about Raising the Stakes. I had no idea that's who you'd mentioned. Let's plug his channel in the notes as well. He's great.
Yeah, well there you go.
Yeah,
and the best newsletter on screenwriting is
Story and Plot.
Storyandplot.com. And I agree.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for getting up early.
I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, well, I'm going back to bed. That's what I'm doing. I've told my kids they can watch all the Sunday morning TV they want. I'm going back to bed. But Tom, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, as always, to our amazing patrons who bring you more Draft Zero more often and who, in fact, weighed in heavily on the homework. Michael Clayton was selected by Tom, but the other two were, particularly the Inglourious Basterds scene was a Patreon pick. So you two can pick our homework, pick our topics, and generally tell us how you feel more directly than other forums. But in particular, thanks to our top tier Patreons who truly bring you more Draft Zero more often. Alexandra, Jenny, Jesse, Crob, Lily, Malay, Paolo, Randy, Sandra, Thies, and Thomas. Thank you so much, guys.
I hope you all feel like arguing with either Stu or myself
about anything on this episode or anything in general.
And you can find many ways of getting in touch with us at our website at draft-zero.com.
At the website, you'll also find the show notes for this and all our other episodes,
as well as links to support us and spread the word for free via a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
Very important for spreading the word.
Or if you think that what we do here is worth $1 or preferably more than $1, then you can also find links to our Patreon page to support us getting these episodes to you quicker. Thanks.
And thanks for listening.